17th of March 2015, and this is the audio podcast, episode 145, headset insert format.
Hello, Scott here. Some glitchy problems today. Are you there, Adam? That'll be a no. Okay, well, we have news. We have Plunder and their...
Big put it on the outside of the ear and gives you an opportunity. So do you think we might all end up walking around with full-size headphones like we're currently wearing right now on our heads?
I don't, not directly into your ears, as the things that you're talking about.
Sorry, that was what I was going with, directly into your ears.
Yep.
As it comes directly.
Washberg?
That's right, yes. Recode is the site that had the original interview.
Walt Mossberg. And basically, Walt Mossberg talked, and Tim was like, okay, yeah, but this is the situation. And, he mentions a thing that I've been thinking for ages, which is that that when a track is played once on the radio, it's heard by thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people maybe, who knows. But when a track is listened to on Pandora, it's one person listening to it, but multiple people are listening to the same track at any one time. So the maths is completely.
You're not comparing like for like. One radio play is not the same as one person playing a song one time. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's a figure that he mentions that if you did kind of bring them into line, then
$1,300
per play.
Per play, yeah. That's
equivalence. Yeah.
Equivalence.
So yeah, I mean. Yeah, read it. Head to the show notes, click on the link, and read away. It's not too long. You'll get through it in a couple of minutes, but it's a good little read. Cool.
I thought it was a good interview. I remember seeing it, had listened to it, and I thought it had to. We don't often get that side of the debate. We get artists complaining all the time. We get industry complaining all the time. And we don't often get the other side every so often, because obviously there's far less players in it.
Well, we have to remember that they come up with a solution? Have they actually, Pandora and Spotify have created a brand new market that didn't exist before, and they've integrated with the record companies. The record companies are getting money, but the record companies don't come out and are like, you know what, this is how we should do it. This is what will solve the problems of our industry. No, they just.
Well, that apparently the record company's response to YouTube is to just have every artist on YouTube with the word Vivo at the end of their name. I don't know if somebody else has, probably not necessarily style like this, but there is a prize draw for a flashback ×4 delay pedals if you're a keyboard player.
TCL electronic pedals are great though, especially the ones that enable you to edit the patches via USB. I think they're great, or other methods as well. But yeah.
But it makes sense. I mean, why limit your audience? Why limit your potential customers? And the only thing I wonder is there a I'm sure TCL Electronic can do it because they're pretty smart dudes.
There will be a modification of some sort.
I think Scott might be going online to find out. I don't know.
No, I haven't gone online to find out. I did momentarily think about that, and then decided not to suspect that they will be able to handle that level of complexity for you, Adam. Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Indeed. So there you go. Have that.
I think what does happen, because usually this topic comes up in the other direction with wanting to plug a guitar or a bass into something which is expecting a line level, in which case you have issues with your high frequencies being attenuated and stuff like that, so your tone's not so great, etc. But what happens in the opposite direction? What does happen if you plug a lower impedance thing into something that might be expecting the higher?
Well, you get those classic impedance mismatches. It doesn't particularly matter which way the mismatch is happening. It prevents the correct kind of transition of the signal across, and so your C kind of. It's much more to do with unintentional filtration effects rather than a default. This is always what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of makes. Looking to try and see if I could find a little bit of more information here, but I'm not particularly. The first thing obviously I've had to do is go into the guitar pedal section to find out about the pedal I might use for my keyboard. It's, you know, but that just made me smile, as they say. Let me have a quick look. I suspect
I've got on my floor a bunch of pedals, and lots of patch cables. Unfortunately, you won't see that if you're listening to the audio podcast via audio only. If you're on the YouTube channel, rather than do all of my processing in like Logic or my DAW, I'm actually going to try and generate some sounds. The other thing you remember with pedals is that a lot of them are mono in, mono out. Some of them are mono in, stereo out. There might be some stereo as well, and it depends on really what they're.
Prompted that idea in me. I might have a little think about that maybe. Maybe.
Well, now everyone with a mobile camera today. Whoa! And that's for a very specific reason. It's because today is my feature, and today my feature will be a kind of brief little. You know, back in the well, I suppose the earliest samplers would have been like the Fairlight board, which would have been 80s. But you know, they were formulated into more of a rack type format back in the 90s with Akai's and Emus, and Yamaha came in later. Don't forget the Rolands, early Roland samplers as well. And now but now since you had your Mac 5 in Digital Performer, and then the whole contact, you know, Native Instruments contact stuff, and some might find it a little bit more straightforward or convenient to use that. So now you can get some old school samplers pretty cheap, considering how much they used to cost. Now I've got two here, which I'm going to kind of run through, and I'll kind of go through some of the ins and outs, literally and non-literally, and other kind of features and things to expect and things to think about. And you guys can butt in any time you want to ask questions or anything like that. Have you got any questions to start off with?
When you said about early samplers, I immediately went to something I've been talking about recently, which is kind of pre-digital samplers, and the earliest form of sampling being the Mellotron, perhaps.
Oh, the Mellotron, yeah. I mean, incredibly difficult. You know, a digital sampler, you just record it in, and then you start messing with it straight away.
Yeah, I suppose.
But you're right. I think that's kind of the early side of sampling could be traced back to that, and then as a product, I would say, you know, it's fair to say that the Fairlight was the instigator, slightly improved version of the S1000. The S1000 is, in many people's eyes, like this classic sample. This kind of range now is that they're revered for their kind of crunchy filters and their crunchy DAs and ADs. So they're still sought after. I've already sold this one to somebody. Can you actually see anything?
Not really.
If I zoom in,
no.
It's faded. The LCD's faded, and that's just going to happen because well, that's the thing. So I don't know exactly when SCSI came onto samplers, but for those
you can get a SCSI to the USB-C connector.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
But SCSI was parallel though. It's not, you know, it's not serial at all. But anyway.
Well, the thing to remember is SCSI was an 80s, 90s technology. It was basically our FireWire, our Thunderbolt. Back then, it used to be what you connected hard drives with for speedy connections. There are lots of different types of SCSI as well, so you have to be careful what type of cables. So that's an AES EBU, I suppose. And this one also has lots of outputs. It's got 8 channel outputs, also a phones out and a foot switch connector.
So go through those outputs again. So when you first said multiple outs, I thought, you know, you might be able to assign you different samples on different MIDI channels to different outputs, but it's different to that, isn't it? It's not.
I use this one, so I can't remember exactly how the assigning works, but you could probably do it per sample. I mean, for me, the ideal would be of this age. Samplers tend to be floppy drive storage. So maximum to get the maximum time out of that, you can lower the sampling rate. So this will max out at 16:44:1. But you can do 32, you can do 16. You could probably do jacks, and there's also a recording gain switch, so you can switch low, mid, and high. And but this does show a waveform when you're editing. And 2001, 2002.
Yeah, I think they swapped them out in 2003. Yeah.
So that would be the S2000 sampler. So the S2000 is a few years younger than this, but it didn't have such a developed display. It was all just characters, and we used to use a software called Misa, which connected via SCSI to do all the editing, because it was
yes,
easy.
to do the editing on a Mac would be the way. Yep.
And that's the thing. Up to this point, before I switch to my other sampler.
No, carry on.
I know. I'm enjoying this a lot. Yeah.
So last week, I pointed my camera at this, which is the Z8 front panel. Now, the Z8 was 2 generations past. Okay, and then you can see on the back here, this doesn't have multiple outputs at the moment, but it has a space just there where you can put a digital board or an analog board. Your inputs are on the back, your outputs are on the back. This one has 32 MIDI tracks, so 2 sets of MIDI ports, and it's got a word clock instead of a SIMPT boards, because you can plug a keyboard into this to name samples and stuff. Amazing, huh? So if
you mean a QWERTY keyboard on that occasion, yeah.
A QWERTY keyboard, yeah. Sorry, I've just switched that on, and it's not plugged in, as I just saw on the back, so you won't be able to see. But on the on this, again, it'll show a waveform. You've got all your functions. You've got a handy little. Okay, well, let's.
We'll be back in a sec.
Scott, what samplers have you used?
I got to be honest. I think obviously the S2000s that we were talking about before, and then very early moved on to computer-based sampling. So I had a G3 MacBook, a G3 Pismo MacBook, which was capable of doing real-time sample playback. Certainly so, because I guess the thing that the balance here that we're talking about, isn't it, is that the hardware samplers were always incredibly reliable to work with, but the problems that you generally had, the problems in having a session put together in a sampler and using Mastertracks Pro as a MIDI sequencer to play the sample, and that would be the track that I was trying to make. And the problem with that process was the kind of MIDI connection out of Mastertracks into the sampler. That was what actually caused the problems. It was that kind of connection between them.
But now I think those connections are a lot better things. So you just have to remember what those were and not do them.
That's exactly the point. I guess what I mean, what the point I'm trying to make is that, well, the XS24, and I would say even to this day, is a horrible piece of software. Like, I just think it's horrific to work with. There was a moment where the computers started to become the preferred method, not because they were actually getting away from that pain of trying to interconnect them.
I think the other side of it is, of course, once you're in the saved as part of the project, the problem with using a hardware sampler, Akai tried to. They had Axis software for this, so that USB connector on the back could connect to the computer, and you could library manage the Z8 and the Z4 samplers. But the problem is that move away from starting my tracks on a DAW and actually trying to generate and work with material in the analog domain, or not in the DAW domain, and then get some sounds, feed them into my DAW, and then work on them there. So we'll see how that kind of goes, and that might be quite an old school workflow. Sam, have you got your?
I forgot one of one. Okay. I forgot one of one. Just a very quick mention, sorry. But the other one that I should have mentioned was the S, which I don't know if you guys remember that, was slightly larger than a compact cassette, and it was incredibly poor in terms of actual audio. In terms of here's a very limited feature set done very cheaply, and it's very easy and fun to work with. It was absolutely something about that, yeah.
And I was tempted, but you know, I've got this one here, so I think I'll use this one for a bit and then maybe branch out. There are also more modern ones, like have you heard of the Micro Granny?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, that's...
We haven't actually, we haven't put that in the any of the audio podcast stuff, but maybe a Plunder item for the future to look at the Micro Granny, because that's it's a Raspberry Pi, so you know, sampling is still there.
Now, Adam, I have to stop you there because remember, this is a historical
input, and it also has a line input. So you've got three choices of sampling source, and there is a hierarchy of which, basically, after you press the sampling button, it will automatically trim, like the silence, so it'll trim your sample, and it has a loop set option, so you can loop your thing, and you've got a...
I'm back now, so that's good.
Cool.
That's the good thing about that. Is it the SK1?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sampling keyboard, and they actually started making sampling keyboards rather than rack units, but they all headed towards being racks. I think probably because everyone already had a keyboard anyway, so you know you could just plug it in via MIDI, so it didn't really matter so much. The rack units were the blue, so that was the one that they had in one of the funny little studios at Huddersfield ages ago. But yeah, I'll call out the S3000XL Akai sampler. So yeah,
that was the first Akai sampler I used. The one with the I think it was 3000, but it had the CD-ROM drive on the front. That was it.
I don't remember what that
was. Portable. It ran off batteries, and it was just it was fun. I think that was the idea with that one. And also ones like the Korg Electribe ES1, that was a kind of easy, fun little sampler that only did 32 kilohertz, I think. But you know, good.
Who are kind of been working in kind of have an interest in music production or music technology in the last less than the last 10 years or something like that, probably look at these hardware things and maybe have a reverence for particular ones based on audio quality issues, like they have a distinctive sound to underperforming. So therefore, if you wanted a lot of sample time, then hardware samplers were the way you went. And if you wanted lots of functionality, hardware samplers, you'd generally buy a sampler and a keyboard, and you would have to compromise. You could either have a moderate sampler and a moderate keyboard, or you could have a good sampler and a poor keyboard, or you could have a good keyboard and a moderate sampler. And the keyboard for the hardware approach, because even once you'd bought the computer, you still had to furnish it with software, and there was lots of reliability questions and things like that. So it was, which approach do you want to take, sort of thing. So.
Indeed.
No, that's just a little.
Hey.
That's cool. As the guys were talking, I have quickly been I've been making notes off of the machines we've mentioned, so I'll add them into the notes, and people will be able to find them as a. I didn't. I've actually. It was. We're extending on here, but it did strike me that we all kind of had a lot of brand affiliation. Like I seem to do a lot of Yamaha ones. Adam, you were mainly listed.
But EMU, they were there before Akai. They made one of the earliest sample keyboards. And Yamaha, well, it just depends how you kind of got into it all, because Yamaha came on along a bit later. There were lots of Roland ones in the 80s, ones that you could connect to CRT screens and have a little editing screen there at front, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about samplers, is they're complex. There's a lot that you have to do with them to make sound. You can't just press 3 buttons and it's done.
Okay, with that, should we go into the
Plunder?
Into the Plunder, yes. I forgot what it was called. I was like,
The sampler. Oh no, wait. And yeah, the first Plunder is a documentary called Discovering Electronic Music. It's available on the YouTube.
The YouTube.
It was made in 1983, so sticking with the vintage thing today. Oh my!
But this is pre. This is pre-vintage. Yeah.
Oh, it depends, because vintage is measured from different places. So a vintage sampler would be an 80s sampler or an early 90s sampler, but a vintage guitar.
By Sam, what greater recommendation could you need to watch Discovering Electronic Music by Bernard Willits, 1983?
2003, and is Russian and English text throughout, and is a catalogue of all of the
There's a Clark Technic
Cool.
one. The Clark Technic one is a DN36 analog time processor. So I wonder if that's like, yeah. And you know, you also got that if it's storage medium. So we've got Atari there, Apple, Commodore.
Yep.
There's probably, I don't know if Windows.
They're all Type 1. Oh no, they've got some Type 4.
Well, Sakai also make, I don't know if they still do, but they used to make stereo equipment. So alongside.
From whenever, that they might not be on this list, and you can submit. So, yep, flatbed scan of the cassette itself and of the inlay, preferably with no markings, and they will still accept new additions.
Oh, my favourite is the Memorex DBS. It's got classic.
This is getting too niche. Our favorite tapes.
90s type graphics on it, and it's just like perfect.
It's been said before, the audio podcast where we look at pictures and talk about them.
Well, you know, we've got to
SA90. There you go. TDK SA90. That was they were nice. I remember those tapes. They were good tapes.
Okay, and from.
So this is me, musicXML. Susanna had a hard drive failure.
Oh!
And as a consequence of the Parallels install had a Windows XP Service Pack 1 with a running version of Sibelius 2 inside it. And that was a bit of a calamity, was how to print some Sibelius scores. So I went into work, I won't say where, but I went into work and made PDF copies of the Sibelius scores. So that was that problem resolved.
Into work at the CIA.
Yeah, why not? Let's say that. And then, having done that, I then noticed that in the current versions of Sibelius, there is an export. Loaded up a recent version of MuseScore, which is what we prefer to use now, and it worked.
Amazing.
Oh, wow, an interchange language actually works.
I guess these things all depends on.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be buying another version of Sibelius.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Well, yes, but it's that moment where you kind of think it out in your mind and think, yeah, that's probably, yeah. Anyway, it worked for me. Very happy about that, and I thought I should reflect. I should mention that. So there you go. Cool. How about that?
Sweet.
And with that, I think we've made it to the end of the audio podcast.
Show at theaudiopodcast.co.uk and via Twitter, the Audio Podcast, or at the Audio Podcast.
Cool. You can also get us, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, YouTube, G-Podder, and Stitcher. But I think we may also have turned up on your, is it In Radio? Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Isn't that a name of a piece that you once wrote?
I did, yes, many years ago, actually.
Wasn't that on radio, though?
Oh, maybe it was on radio, actually, yeah. I don't know. But I think we're... If I remember correctly, if you have like a PlayStation 4 or a current Xbox, there is a chance that if you go into the streaming radio thing on that, we go.
Well, none of us have got that.
I know.
Those consoles, so we can't actually test. So if there's anyone out there who has a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, can you just check to see if we're there and let us know?
I think so. I think that's what it was, wasn't it? I don't remember.
We'll mention you on the next show.
Yeah, why not? That's